Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Islam for Europeans. I'm your host, Robert. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Do apologize that I have not made a video in quite some time. But I wanted to talk about a concept that I've been thinking about for quite a long time. As you know, I'm a huge fan of The Simpsons. Um, One of the probably the best episode, or probably the most talked about episode, is called Homer's Enemy. If you haven't seen it, you might want to get a chance to watch it, because a lot of psychologists will use this episode. In business classes will use it. Interpersonal dynamics consultants will use this episode as kind of like a framework, or a couple, I guess, archetypes for better understanding like interpersonal relationships. So basically, in Homer's Enemy, the episode is about a gentleman named Frank Grimes. Now, Frank, he had a very difficult childhood. He was orphaned at a young age. He ended up going to school by mail. He did end up doing his master's degree in nuclear physics. He worked really hard, to get to where he was, and it ended up being like a very inspiring, news story. And Mr. Burns, he ends up hiring Frank after being so moved by all the struggles that he went to achieve that. So um, when he gets hired, he ends up angering Mr. Burns for some reason, or very dismissive of him, and he ends up with like this low level job in the power plant. But nonetheless, Frank, he puts in a really good effort. Like always, he's extremely hardworking. He wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. So he tries, his very best. And this it's basically the exact opposite of Homer. Now, Homer, for those who watch The Simpsons, is the archetypal kind of baby boomer, white suburbanite, family, three kids, on a nuclear power plant supervisor's salary. He, only has like a high school education. So this job just kind of just fell onto his lap. So Homer has been kind of like fast tracking his whole life, while Frank has been struggling a lot, basically. So um, you know, and this really irritates Frank, and he's irritated with the fact that Homer, in addition to being far lazier, boorish, doesn't care about safety, uh, puts the power plant in extremely dangerous positions, and seems to get away with it. This really bothers Frank, because of how hard he's worked to get to that. And I guess Homer, he can't really understand it, because he's always kind of had the easy life. He didn't have to go to post-secondary education. He's made a lot of mistakes in his life, but still he's been incredibly successful, not just in his career, but also with other accomplishments that he's done outside of his work as well. So, Homer is really bothered by this. Like, he can't understand why Frank doesn't like him. So what he does is he invites Frank to dinner, right? And for those who've seen the episode, he spares no expense. He gets lobster. He dresses up the family really nice. Like, he makes sure everything is perfect. Lobster's cooking in the pots, and Frank comes back from his second job, and enters the Simpsons household, and this just enrages him further. Like, he basically tells Homer the way it is, that like he's what's wrong with America, that he leeches off of society, of hardworking individuals, and he gets away with it, right? Because he sees that Homer has, the 2.5 kids, the beautiful wife, the big home, the supportive family, lobsters for dinner. He's met presidents before, and the thing is, Homer still can't understand it. He still can't get it through his head why Frank is upset with him. Right, so he tries even harder. He tries to be a model worker more often, but it's all just window dressing to Frank. and that's why Frank ends up being undoubtedly Homer's nemesis and then his eventual downfall. Now, psychologists have looked at this, this whole dynamic between Frank and Homer, and does Frank bear some of the blame for, his demise? And one could say yes. I mean, I think Frank's downfall is that even though he was incredibly hardworking, he wanted to put in the best possible effort. It's a rags to riches story, or rags to middle class story. Um, like the fact that he couldn't realize that this is what God had ordained for him, that he was going to live this lifestyle, that he wasn't going to be as successful as Homer. Um, I think, I think this is what irked him more than anything else. He just felt that like the whole universe was incredibly unfair to him, and and then he wasn't very good with interpersonal relationships. I mean, like he couldn't, try to reason with Homer or just kind of understand his worldview. And so I do think that Frank, at the end of the day, even though Homer was very irresponsible, does share some of the downfall. Um, so where am I going with all this? Right? This long drawn out explanation. You can see the episode for yourself, but I think a lot of mosques and Islamic organizations in trying to help out converts are kind of in ways similar to the way that Homer is thinking about it, or yes, failing to think about it. And that's not to say that they're like Homer Simpson. I mean, Homer Simpson is like incredibly boorish and like totally doesn't understand what's going on and naive to Frank's situation. I think at the same time, I think there's some merit in saying that like it's kind of a similar situation in that they can't really understand many times the convert's perspective. And I think even converts play a role in this sometimes. The like I said, the PhD level converts, even they can't understand that inviting converts over for dinner or for iftar or for Eid prayer, just going to Eid prayer, how isolating and alienating and depressing it can be, even though it's supposed to be the happiest day of the year for Muslims. A lot of converts will go to Eid prayer and see that they see all these families smiling, cousins greeting each other, everyone giving each other hugs, everyone going out to dinner afterwards, people speaking their own language, wearing their traditional clothing, um, saying salam to their family members on their iPhone, meeting their extended family members for dinner. Most converts don't have any of this, and it can be incredibly isolating to experience that, because I think it's not that the Muslim community is doing anything wrong with this per se. I just at the end of the day, the people born into Muslim families, they're going to go home to the Muslim family to the Muslim extent. Not all of them. I mean, many of them are living, abroad, as international students. So that could be isolating in and of itself. I'm not denying that experience. What I'm saying is that by and large, I think that feeling of loneliness, of alienation, is the feeling that no one's going to have your back. That when you leave the Eid prayer, when you leave the mosque, you're going to be the only Muslim in your entire sphere, within your entire family, within your entire community. And I think some Islamic leaderships, they just, they kind of think of the same way that Homer Simpson does. I mean, after Frank, gets upset at Homer, Homer just can't really he can't wrap his head around it. He can't say, why is Frank, so upset with the fact that, that I cooked this wonderful dinner for him, and my family's really dressed up nice, and even Marge tries to reason with Homer and saying, I think the reason why Frank is so upset is because he's had it so hard, and you have all these wonderful things you have to be thankful for, and you haven't had to work nearly as hard for it. And still, Homer can't wrap his head around it. He just gets, he says, yeah, you know what, he's a nut. And I think some Islamic leadership and even some converts really have this mindset that, like, the Muslim community is going out of their way They're having an iftar, for the converts, or we're inviting them to Eid prayer, um, and even inviting them for dinner, maybe. And that in and of itself should be enough. That this should be a sufficient amount of support for them. So, and I know this sounds harsh, and I don't want to sound like not inviting converts to dinner is not a good idea. I do think it's a wonderful idea. But I really think that what we're missing, and I guess what Frank was missing as well, is his desire or his realization that he himself needs to form his own wolf pack. Because at the end of the day, Homer is not going to help Frank in his own situation when he goes home, where he lives in an apartment above a bowling alley and below another bowling alley. That's why converts, they need to organize themselves in the same way that Muslims have already done so in the West. And this Ramadan, alhamdulillah, was very, very fortunate to actually be part of an organization of converts where we actually implemented this IRL. During Ramadan, we organized our own iftars, we cooked our own food, we catered our own food. It was a communal experience, so that when we went for the iftar, it wasn't just that the Muslim community was inviting us as guests. This was something that we took on ourselves, and I think that it felt like far less isolating. It felt that not only was the Muslim community there with us as a whole, but this was something that we did, that we had our own wolf pack. And I think that this has probably been the best Ramadan that I've ever experienced, because we've been doing that. And like myself, I can handle it. I've been an integrated Muslim community member for many years, but I think we just got absolutely glowing reviews from many converts that we've never seen before, to say look, now we feel like we're actually part of truly part of the Muslim Ummah. We have a group of people who have gone through the exact same experience that we have gone through. We can relate to them. They have our back. We can ask them for advice when it comes to our family and things like that. And this was just enormously successful. So in conclusion, I would say that the whole Frank Grimes, what I call the Frank Grimes effect, I think it affects a lot of Islamic leadership, and even many converts, in thinking that once someone converts to Islam, all we need to do is invite them to our lobster dinner and show them our wonderful family. And if when they come to Eid prayer, they're going to feel just as welcome and invited and integrated as we do, because we have this Muslim family and everything. I think in that aspect, they really are acting like Homer, because Homer just he couldn't understand it. He couldn't understand that why is Frank feeling so angry at me, when I catered this wonderful meal for him and showed him my incredible family and all the accomplishments that I've done. Yeah, I think that's pretty much about it. I just let me know what you think in the chat, about the Frank Grimes effect. And and on a final note, again, some converts, they end up acting like Frank Grimes, and I think this is incorrect as well, because they'll see this, and they'll see the fact that on Eid prayer you have all these smiling, happy Muslim families, and they just feel incredibly, totally isolated, and they end up dropping out, or they end up lashing out, and I think that's the incorrect response as well. As we know, it wasn't just Homer, that was kind of in the wrong with the whole Frank Grimes of his situation, but Frank himself, because he didn't realize that, this was the struggle, and this was the situation that God has put forth for me. For me to be jealous of Homer is basically envy. And, I think envy was, at the end of the day, the deadly sin that ended up being Frank's downfall. So my advice to converts who feel this way is don't be envious of the Muslim community. This is the path that Allah has set out for us. And, form a wolf pack. You're not alone. Other converts are there with you. We've been through those experiences, and we're here to help. So that's my advice. Let me know what you think in the chat, and peace and blessings to all. And may Allah accept our fast and all of our prayers and all of our efforts during the month of Ramadan. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help all those oppressed Muslims in the world. أقول لك هذا استغفر الله. Thank you. Have a nice day.